Good morning, everybody. We hope you're here joining us for Parenting Through COVID-19. We are Jim Mazza and Liz Dexter Mazza, psychologists and parents. Are you kind of figuring out how to fit in here? All right, we got to fit in here together. All right. If you're here with us this morning, please give us a wave. Let us know you're with us. Good morning, Molly. Glad you're here. And today's Wednesday. Is today April 1st?
Today's April 1st.
Oh, maybe yesterday should have been April 1st because that felt like a huge joke being played on us. And we'll get to talking about that. So glad folks are here. And let's talk about what it's like parenting. We're now all in week 3 of COVID-19 and isolation and trying to do things as we move through. We started online school for our kids on Monday, and it's very interesting how to have a more positive, joyful mastery day, or can make you feel more negative and frustrated based on the expectations and perspectives we have for everything.
Right.
So just to give you an example, and I think this is important because we've been talking about perspective and how we look at things and how that impacts how we're doing and how we feel. And I want, for parents, I think this is important. I think for kids, it's important, and all the different pieces. So we had an expectation that when we knew our school was moving to Microsoft Teams and going online, compared to where we were, where our kids were just getting a lot of all their weekly assignments, we thought going onto Teams and online meant like they were going to start getting some lectures and live Zoom, like kind of Zoom-like classes, but through Teams, and be more interactive. And I think that was a different expectation of what our school had planned to do, where they used Teams so that they could connect with the students, put all their assignments in one place, allow the kids to connect with each other, and that the teachers would only be coming on here and there, but not actually doing a lot of live questions and live pieces. And so I think that set the kids up thinking they were going to be like with their teacher, with their classmates. It set me up thinking I was going to have a little more time to work because they were going to be more directed other than me. And that's not exactly what happened. And the first days were always difficult, and there was like the bumps that we were all trying to figure out to understand what the class schedule was and everything.
And sometimes even the teachers didn't know the class schedules, right? And so I think the idea was that we thought, and this is what our anchor point was, and I just got done teaching this at the university course yesterday, is that we had the thought or expectation, our anchor point was that they would start teaching again and have some interaction with the kids, and we would be free to kind of get back to our lives trying to do some of our things, right? And that anchor point, that expectation didn't happen where the teachers were available for questions. They would say, hey, here's the assignments, they'd email it out, and then we're available for questions if needed. And so it really still had us still kind of providing the instruction and dealing with the issues that were there. And so needless to say, I think that, our expectations, there's a big gap from what actually happened to what we actually were expecting. And that was, for us, it was a disappointment because our expectations were high. And it might not have ever been, if we had put our expectations lower, had understood what that was really going to be, I think we would have been less, disappointed, less
judgmental to begin with, right? And knowing that judgments fuel our emotions. The more judgmental we are, the more intense our emotion gets. That's a big part of it. Good morning, Julie. For those who else just joined us, send us a wave. Let us know you're here. So we can say hi to you as well. And we're glad you're here this morning. And so I think just, again, every day I'm trying to have to reset expectations, reset perspectives. Now that our kids are able to fully be online in Teams with their classes, I'm now monitoring a whole lot of chit-chatting versus school work doing.
Right.
And trying to shut that down. So it was like a real shift on what skills I needed to use every day to set my expectations, to notice my frustration, and then to make a wise mind decision, to mindfully make a decision to not act from those emotions, like getting either angry at the school or angry at the kids, trying to get them to do their work, and to just come back and have conversations about it. But that took a lot of mindfulness and slowing down on my part and noticing that it was my expectations that might have been making that shift there. On that, good morning, Sandra. Thanks for being here with us. So I would love to know how many of you were with us yesterday when we went live for the first time on teaching the DBT Steps A class, surviving and thriving through COVID-19, and the skills we were trying to teach our kids and all the lots of kids out there for yesterday. Good morning, Laura. So if you were there, throw us a wave, tell us good morning, make a comment, let us know that you were there with us. Because talking about expectations
Yeah,
and talking about April Fool's Day.
well, and then also talk about being vulnerability, right? And so we had set out to provide live instruction of teaching our lessons to people all over. I would say the country who wanted to join us, right? So I sent out links, and Liz sent out links, and so we were really excited about teaching some of the lessons and having some interaction with people from all over, where we would be going to homes if they were going to view us and provide some skills for social emotional learning. And boy, it just it started off great. And what happened is that we got what's called Zoom bombed. It was new to us, and so somebody was able to get into our Zoom meeting without us asking, right? Because we had made it public. We wanted it to go out to as many homes and as many parents as possible to help with the kids. And someone came in and was able to Zoom bomb and started writing on a whiteboard that came across our shared screen, and then started asking questions interactively with us that were really hard for us, right? They were profane, they were embarrassing. It had they showed a picture of a pornography site. It was just really difficult in that regard. And so,
and this all happened, let me just catch that, within a minute.
Oh, less than that, right? It just
and then
all just
were able to shut it down.
20 seconds, right?
But the ability of all of a sudden realizing what's happening and emotion going up on this. And we've got our kids in the room with us, but then we know there are a lot of kids out there watching, and a lot of our friends' kids,
right?
And we're young kids, and it was like that intense emotion, when all of a sudden you get panicky and you're trying to do something very quickly, and knowing we're live on a video. It took a whole lot of emotion to figure out how to what was happening in a quick amount of time, and then how to quickly end the entire meeting. So we had about 70 families, kids all on watching with us yesterday and learning with us, and it was a shocker. And so we figured out we had to end the meeting for everybody, which really made me sad. And quickly moved into problem solving, right? But when I was in emotion mind, if you remember we talked about emotion mind last week, that's when your emotions are just running the show. And this is actually what we were teaching yesterday, was mindfulness and wise mind versus emotion mind and reasonable mind. When your emotions are running the show and you're not able to make quick decisions or effective decisions.
Right.
And
I think it caught us off guard. We're like deer in the headlights. Laura, thanks for telling us it was going great at the time. And so we thought so too. So we didn't expect it, and so that was probably some what's the word I want? Some naivety, yeah, right, on our part, right? And I'm running the technical stuff, so Liz was teaching, and so at first when I saw it happening, I was trying to shut down that person's feed. That didn't work because we had the settings different at that point. They're able to manipulate the writing, and so it got to a much different spot so quick on me, and I'm not the media person there, and so it just kind of overwhelmed. So we didn't know how to react at first, other than say, "Please stop! There are kids here, right?" And these are all of our families and the kids and so forth. And so we ended up, I think, as our emotions were getting a bit higher, still in a bit of wise mind, we just ended up shutting it all down, and so that we could just kind of regroup. And then as soon as we shut it all down, we just looked at each other and we both wanted to cry. We were just like, no, that could not be happening, right? And then we're like, okay, we can't be in this spot though. We've got to come back and get ourselves back together. We've got a show to do. We've promised this to the people. And so we just kind of almost like had to use our accept skill, like just pushing it away. We'll come back to this. We'll cry later. But right now, we've got to focus on
being in this moment. And simultaneously, I think I want to just highlight also, like, our 3 kids were in the room. So there's this place of wise mind where trying to make effective decisions as we model for them, right? It's not like we were perfect at all, and our kids were like, what just happened, and getting up, they were angry and judgmental, and trying to balance the kids and helping them to notice their judgments and regulate and not say all these things, how horrible it was, while I was simultaneously trying to figure out the settings and how to get us back up and running.
Yeah.
And trying to coach them to hold their judgments so that I could problem solve over here. They knew I wasn't doing it perfectly.
Well, and what they wanted was a mom and dad right then and there, right, to hug them and say, "You're right. That wasn't appropriate. Here's what's going on," right? And we couldn't do that because we had to get back up, and I had to be media technology person, and you had to be teacher, right? And so that was really hard for them. And matter of fact, Ashton, our middle one, just he shut down. He was so upset about what had happened, and if you watched the second part, if you came back and joined us, you saw that he was not engaged at all. His affect was just really sullen. He was like, "I'm out." That was just horrible, right? And so he was affected for several hours even afterwards, and you couldn't console him for several hours. And so again, emotions kind of running.
He was angry. He had a lot of judgments running through his head,
and he had a right to be. So when we talk about that, right? So when we check the facts about anger, right? He had a right to be angry. And that doesn't mean, though, that you can take it out on anybody, although I'm sure he would have loved to have done that, right? And so he shut down. And so we talk about, when we check the facts, we sat with the shame that our friends and their kids got to see this, right? And so the first thing that we wanted to kind of do was to just run and hide. That's what shame gives you the urge to do, right? And yet, what I loved about that was that because it really wasn't our fault when we checked the facts, shame isn't justified there, right? And so I love the fact that Liz actually got together with some of her girlfriends to talk about it, right? The exact opposite of what the urge is to go crawl underneath your covers, put them over your head, and just like, tell me when the next day shows up, right? And
or not do this at all again, like snap all together.
So opposite action says when the facts don't fit, you've got to do opposite what your urge is. So instead of getting underneath your covers and waiting for the next day or never do this again, she went and got support. And I think that that's really important because when you have those days where you just feel like you're the worst parent or terrible things happened or you're not being good to your spouse or whatever else, then you need to give yourself time. And if you're a single parent, I want to certainly say too, you also need that time, right? Somebody can't jump in there and take your place. So if you need that support and you've got that shame or guilt and it's not justified, right? Your urge is to want to pull the covers over, then reaching out is exactly the opposite action that you need to do to help you get over some of that emotion, right? And so I applaud you for doing that opposite action in the face of really just a hard day. And I will say too that both of us, because I was busy teaching at that point, right around 5 o'clock, we finally got a chance to give each other a big hug, and it was a bit tearful, right? And then we wanted nothing to do but to go to sleep early last night. So we were just emotionally exhausted, and so I think that was important for us to share because we were vulnerable at that point and didn't realize actually how vulnerable we were going to be in front of all of our friends. So that was really hard. We felt a bit embarrassed. We felt shame. And yet we knew that it wasn't our fault. So, again, trying to work with those emotions that come really, really quickly and then saying that we didn't do that, though. It wasn't because of us, right? And so how do we get ourselves out of that funk? Mm-hmm. And thank goodness we know about skills, right?
Right. And I'd say, there's some embarrassment, shame. There's also a lot of sadness.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just read
I think that was justified too.
Right, and my sadness, I went back and watched the video of it last night, just not to re-torture myself, but just to actually see what happened and a not high reactive space. And it was pretty awful, and it was disgusting. And one of the things that I noticed was watching some of my friends putting their hands over their kids' ears. And then seeing the look on our kids' faces because they were on camera when it happened, and then just having to sit with that sadness, right? That's how it happened. And if anybody was here with us on Monday morning, if you remember, the last thing I said was, "Aw, you're so sweet, honey," is that this might suck, and if it sucks, then we will figure that out, and then we will do better. And I got to tell you, it sucked. The first time, it was definitely a fail in regards to first attempt in learning, and we will keep going.
I think that your lesson was great, right? So I think that the message that we were trying to do was wonderful. So that didn't suck, right? I think that the issue is that we didn't recognize the technology vulnerabilities that we had. And what added gas to that whole fire was a half an hour later after we're done, Liz sees on ABC News about Zoom bombing and all the things you have to do to make sure you don't get Zoom bombed. I'm like, oh great, where was that a half an hour before we went live? Right?
And there were about 6 other like news reports about that throughout the day. So apparently it's been happening in the last week, and all the news agencies got on it yesterday after our live feed.
Right. And so I think that the point is that you don't know what you don't know, right? And so I didn't know any of that. And so I look back now and I was thinking even out on my run this morning is I could have done this and I could have done this and I could have and I go back and I play Monday morning quarterback. Like I could have done these things differently. We would have shut it down sooner. And I'm like, just stop. I have to stop myself. Just say stop. You didn't have that knowledge before. So you can't make that judgment. Would I wish I would have had that knowledge? Yes. And the fact is, at that time, I didn't. So I found myself kind of beating myself up a bit and then having to say, wait, that's not how things actually were at that time, though. You can't take what you know now and go back in time. Boy, I wish I could do that for a lot of decisions I made in my life. I don't know about you guys, but there's certainly times when I wish I could go back a day, a year, 10 years, 20 years. I'd do things differently, right? And I'd still be married to this one, though.
Well, thank you. So why is this actually, we're just here telling you about our story and what happened, but why I think it's relevant to this live stream and the show and what we're doing
keep creeping out of the camera.
I'm sorry. Is because these were all skills that we're all having to do about setting expectations and being skillful and regulating our emotions during these unexpected times. Like, we're just trying new things and new opportunities are coming up and we're having new experiences at home with our kids that can just be fueling emotion sometimes when we don't even know it's about to come in because it's a new thing. Right. I think about all different, experiences that parents are having from some families that I work with in schools in some areas where the kids are at like a residential boarding school during the week, and now all of a sudden they're home full time in their homes and they are in the inner city and they don't have opportunities to get out, and those new expectations that are coming in and having high emotions, not having space to get away from each other, or families that I've spoken to where there may be one parent who is like the primary caregiver who's maybe a stay-at-home parent and making sure like meals and homework and parenting is mostly done while the other parent works full-time, and then all of a sudden that parent's in the house now as well and kind of like making play calls from the sidelines about parenting or homework or how to address things, and it's like just getting some of people to react in a way like, wait a minute, that's your job, this is my job, don't tell me how to do the thing I'm used to doing all the time when you're not here. Right. And those pieces can bring up high emotion and give us emotional reactions during the day as well. And being able to notice those, right? This is where mindfulness, I think, is so important. Noticing when you're having a reaction and then coming back and asking yourself, should I make this response? Is this response I'm about to have, like verbal response or behavioral response I'm about to, is this wise-minded, right? It's like, do I snap at my partner for making a call from another room about what I'm doing with the kids or something else in the house? Or do I just kind of take some deep breaths, take a pause, and a step back and just ask myself, do I need to make this comment? Is this emotion mind or wise mind response? Right. Sometimes that happens when I'm in the one room and you're hearing me say something to the kids and I'll hear my name called from the other room. One, trying to give me a cue, but also sometimes that comes across as that like extra amount of parenting, as if I need some support, coaching in the moment.
Right.
But I don't always want it.
And sometimes you don't even have that extra partner there, right? And so then it's all building up, and then it comes out at your children, right? Or you take it out on yourself, and both of those things aren't very healthy either. And so I think, like I said, I thought it was great that you reached out, that you got some support from some of your friends, and so I wanted to let that go. That was a part of you needing and wanting to talk about those things. And so I worked with some of our kids at that point. If you're a single parent, I still think reaching out is important, all right? If that means that they have to be watching a show for 30 minutes or if they're reading a book, give them something to do for that 20 minutes so that they can respond and get some support so that they're not recycling and refueling how awful they are or how much shame that they feel or I'm not a good parent, right? During these times now of COVID-19, we're under each other all the time. We're going to need really like proactive reaching out. We're going to want people to be supportive of each other. And our issue for yesterday was that we were probably more concerned about how it would come across during the lesson or what our kids were going to respond to. We never saw this one coming, right? And so it just kind of blindsided us. Like I said, it was more of a deer in the headlights. And then what do we do once that's done? So now that that's done, and we can't go back and change it, I wish we could. And now that it's done, how do we recover to be effective again?
I think that also just
Stay, there you go.
sorry. I think the other pieces that I think is relevant to kind of our experience yesterday to what everybody else is having is we had this live vid show we were doing. We had this whole experience happen, and then we had to come back online and keep teaching, right? And so practicing like how do I get recentered, get refocused, and be mindfully in the moment of now I'm back trying to teach, even though all these emotions are still there, and I'm looking at the emotional reactions on our kids' face.
Right.
And then even when that was done, you had to go and teach 2 online classes at the university to 300 and 200 students.
Right.
Again, just like, and I imagine that's what many of us are having. We're having these experiences with our kids at home, and we're trying to work, and you're trying to shift back and forth. And that ability to regulate your thoughts and your emotions and be productive and effective at both of those is this new trying experience. Yeah. And I think that's where giving yourself that mindfulness pause and that moment of grace and validation, yeah, so that you can make those shifts. And it's not like you just said, well, I can't deal with what happened today and I don't care about it. It was you had to mindfully put that up on a shelf, yeah, until 5 o'clock when you were done teaching your 2 classes. Yeah. And then be able to come back and give each other a hug and talk about it, yeah, through the day.
Yeah, that was that pushing away our P and accepts, right? And so having to do that. And so the other thing that I think that we can do if you're a parent, right, whether you've got a partner or not, is that let your kids be a part of that transition, though. I mean, there are times when, and Liz tells me all the time that, hey, you're not telling me what you're doing. I don't know how you've transitioned, right? And she's right. And so I've got to be more conscious, say, look, I know what I'm doing. Clearly, though, you don't. It doesn't come across my forehead, although my forehead's getting bigger for a bigger screen there, right? And so the idea is that we can't read each other's minds that way, right? And so we want our kids can't read our minds either. So we think that they should be able to make this easy transition with us, and it isn't so. And so I think that, just saying, hey, Mom's got a meeting in 2 minutes. I'm just letting you know that that's coming. I please don't knock or disturb me at that point. If you have a question, write it down. And we're in this together. Let's go team, and we'll give them a part of being aware of that transition and being part of the team that's making these transition, right? Because there are times when you change role from parent to professional and back to parent again, and so we often don't give our kids any lead time to be able to make that switch with us, and I think that that's important.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So just takeaways. I just want to repeat, and then I want you, if you have questions or comments, please throw them up there, because what we're experiencing here, what we're hearing from others, I know is not what everybody's experience is, but hopefully you can take the relevance. But love to see just any questions you all have, and we appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining us, Andy and Lynn and Michelle and Jacqueline. That's great too. But just a couple takeaways, right? Like we keep saying over and over, give yourself grace and take a moment. But think about the mindfulness pause, right? To take a moment to step back. We call this our stop skill. Step back, right? To one stop, take a step back. Really just think mindfully, doing one thing at a time, and then proceeding mindfully. What do I need to do? Ask yourself, is this wise mind or is this motion mind? How should I respond right now? And how do I kind of down-regulate my emotions enough to not feel overwhelmed and panicked? Right. And that's by getting into wise mind on what's effective, yep, right now, and making those decisions. And then coming back and talking about it with your friends, with your family, with your kids. Like, we had lots of ongoing conversations with our kids throughout it yesterday. They knew it was a struggle for us, for them, and they're willing to try again on Thursday, which is when we'll be back. Right. With everybody, and we'll do Thursday morning. And I think unfortunately, our expectation of being able to be interactive with our online audience, and for them to be able to raise their hand and ask questions, is something we're no longer going to be able to do. It'll just be if anybody has any questions verbally, how we can do that, but then delete and block people if needed. So that's kind of our plan to try it again Thursday morning. We'll send out information on that.
Yeah.
What questions? Thank you, Jacqueline, for your comments. That's really kind and appreciated. And thank you, Lynn, also.
So I think that, the idea that we had in our heads was to be interactive across the country, right? And because we wanted to be interactive and let people join in our living room when we were doing this, our settings weren't set high enough to restrict that. And so anybody could have joined, and that's what happened. And so we're going to try to do the interactivity a little bit differently, where people are going to have to, submit something, and then I can read that out, or I can unmute them, whatever that's going to be on Facebook Live. That's going to be a new media for me again. And so it'll be interesting to see, how that goes. We are now lowering the bar a little bit, right? We still think that we'll have some nuances that we don't see, that we can foresee, and so there'll be some hurdles or bumps that are going to be there, and we'll do our best in teaching those. And so I thought it was interesting, though, that the lesson that we were actually teaching, we had to use like on the spot, right? And so it's hard. So we want to make sure that we communicate that to you, even as people that develop their curriculum, that we get put in situations sometimes where we're deer in the headlights, and what's the thing that we need to do. And like Liz said, pause. How do I get back to my wise mind to make a decision here, right? And mine was distract. I was like, man, I know my emotions are really high here, and I've got to go teach. And so I pushed this emotion away and said, I got to focus on teaching. I'll come back to this emotion and
right.
some others.
And then the final thing I'll say is also remembering to come back, and in this mindfulness piece that we taught yesterday, and we've said this the other day, about also noticing what went well. Right? When we tend to have this opportunity to notice in our emotion mind all the negative experience that we've had, right? We miss highlighting what went well and finding joy. And that's where I think like doing our daily gratefuls at dinner, getting everybody to go around the table and say what they were experienced joy in that day or what they were grateful for that day, is an opportunity to mindfully pay attention to joy. And that was something that was really helpful for us to do yesterday, just to come back, like, what did go well? Yeah. That we were able to get back online. And, although about 35 people 40 people didn't come back with us, 25 people still did. Yeah, and we had good feedback and found it helpful. And we were able to model and teach how something can go terribly wrong and you can keep going, right? And there was benefits in there, and the joy that came out of it, and the connection we had with our kids out of that. But I want you also to make sure you're paying attention to joy during the day, not just what didn't go well, but also what did go well. Even if there's small moments, make sure you're mindful of those.
Yeah, and we have to, one of the other skills that's in our distressed child, so hopefully we'll get to as we keep doing this, is that we had to keep turning our mind that we weren't the cause of this, right? That we were trying to do something for other people, and that it wasn't our fault, right? And so
that was a little bit our fault because we didn't have the settings set.
I was just going to get there, right? So we could have been a little bit more technologically savvy. That's on me, on you about the interactive classroom. And so, and again, we don't know. And then give ourselves grace, right? So we tried to do this as best we could. We didn't know any better at that point. And so give ourselves some grace at times. You're doing the best that you can, and we can make some improvements, right? And so I think that's kind of where we are. Are we feeling vulnerable for tomorrow? Sure, right? How can we not be, right? We just kind of got our hands slapped, in doing this. And so we're going to be a little bit more conscientious about that. We're going to try to make sure that things don't happen. And because when we feel vulnerable, we tend to want to walk away from it. We're going to go forward, though. And so that's the opposite thing of that urge of feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore, right? So we're going to practice about being vulnerable. And I think that's going to be helpful to us as professionals, can be helpful to our kids. And so I think that we want to make sure that we don't see vulnerability or some anxiety as a barrier. Actually, we're going to get through this together, and we're going to make sure that it's not as anxiety-provoking as it might be right now, because it's still kind of fresh for us. And so we're kind of doing some of our own opposite action that way in our behaviors.
Yes. So, all right, let's see what Gosha said. Thanks for processing the experience here, especially in such a graceful and productive way. Learning how to do this is valuable. Thank you, Gosha, and Jacqueline, everybody, for being here today. Your comments are really helpful. Just love that you all are joining in with us and that we're able to have conversations with you. Hopefully you find it helpful. You'll take this and practice noticing the pause today, being
Yep.
in making emotion-minded decisions, giving yourself some grace, and noticing joy in your day. Sorry.
That's right. And reaching out. If you notice that you're kind of stuck somewhere, you feel like you're beating yourself up, reach out. I know that's the opposite of what you feel like doing, and that's still effective though, is to do the opposite of that emotion. And so I think that you want to be able to reach out and talk to others and get some support, because this is a hard time. If you do want to join us, where can people find us tomorrow?
Tomorrow we are, I think we're going to be on Facebook Live. I think we're going to, maybe this is my little avoid Zoom tomorrow. Because just mainly because it doesn't give us, the whole point of going with Zoom was so we could have that interactive nature. And since we can't do that, I think we're going to just push through here on Facebook Live at 10 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. And then we'll be back for this parenting show on Friday morning at 7 a.m. So please come back, share with your friends, screenshot it, send it out. And we appreciate that. And we will see you all either tomorrow and or Friday.
Great. So, go skillfully.
Have a good one. Have a great day. Take care and find joy.